Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you like this podcast, you will love my new anthology called Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids. Check it out, and you'll hear from 49 authors about all sorts of things moms don't have time to do. All the authors have been on this podcast. Also, check out my TikTok @with Zibby and Tracy, my other podcast, Sex Talk with Zibby and Tracy. Check out Moms Don't Have Time to Write on Medium. And of course, my new publishing company called Zibby Books. And now back to our daily author interview site and a quick hello from some of my kids. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Enjoy the show. I'm so honored to have interviewed the legendary author Sandra Cisneros about her latest book, Martita, I Remember You, and in Spanish, Martita, Te Recuerdo. Sorry, I don't speak Spanish. Sandra is a poet, short story writer, novelist, essayist, performer, and artist whose work explores the lives of the working class. Her numerous awards include NEA fellowships in both poetry and fiction, a MacArthur Fellowship, several honorary doctorates, and national and international book awards, including Chicago's Fifth Star Award, the PEN America Literary Award, and the National Medal of Arts. Most recently, she received the Ford Foundation's Art of Change Fellowship, was recognized among the Frederick Douglass 200, and won the PEN Nabokov Award for Achievement in International Literature. In addition to her writing, Cisneros has fostered the careers of many aspiring and emerging writers through two nonprofits she founded, the Macondo Foundation and the Alfredo Cisneros del Moral Foundation. She is also the organizer of Los MacArturos, Latino MacArthur Fellows, who are community activists. And now I think I should go back to school for Spanish because French seems to have been a complete waste. Sandra, I am so honored to be talking to you today for Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm finally here.
You're finally here. Yay. Well, congratulations on Martita, I Remember You, a story in English and Spanish, which conveniently, I'm showing this on the screen, comes both ways in English and Spanish in different sides, which was beautiful. So thank you for this beautiful story. And I'm just so excited to talk to you about your career and everything. But first, could you tell listeners a little bit about why this story? Why now?
Well, because I had it stashed away like a favorite dress that you want to wear one day. You always know that dress is in the closet. I've never worn it. And I had to finish it. So it was something that I started early 90s when I was closer to the experience that I had lived that started the story and the people that inspired it. And it was way back when I did a story collection called Woman Hollering Creek. This was supposed to be one of the stories, but I didn't finish it, or I handed it in with just the first portion. None of the Chicago portion was there. And my editor said, this is not done. I thought, well, okay, I'll put it away. And I always meant to go back to it. I just got busy with life, That's how it is.
It happens. So you dug it out and finished it up, and now here it is. Beautiful. Did it always have, I know that a lot of this is dialogue, but a lot of it is also in letter form, and so you sort of weave in the epistolary. Was that the way you had always envisioned it, or is that a new wrinkle you've added?
Yeah, and the original story was just the first part, and it ends with the first part and the middle section with the letters, and the end wasn't there. And I just thought that was enough, but it wasn't. And I had to build a frame around it. The character, the protagonist, she's scraping the wood, the varnish off woodwork.
Yes.
And in Chicago, a lot of the apartments have that hutch. And I have scraped that woodwork. So I know, I don't know how I remembered that, but I put that in there. So that became like the frame, the bookend of the story. That was not something that was there originally, nor did I know it was going to be there. I take little pieces of my life. I remember something that happened to me when I was 25, and something when I was 28, and something yesterday, and something that happened to you. And I kind of put them like building a little puzzle, like whatever will fit and make the story believable. That's how I write. I write in what I call little buttons. And I write the little buttons. Sometimes two people say, a couple of phrases. That's all I have. I don't know who's speaking, or a little memory or smell, sensory details. And I save them and put them together.
Wow. I read in your memoir about when you were writing House on Mango Street, and everybody was asking if it was about you. And you wrote a whole essay about, well, is it me? Or yes and no, right? It's about me, and there are things about me and my family and the people in the community. So is it me? It is, and it isn't. Which,
Well, you think about all the stories that you're witness to in one day, the things people tell you, the things you see on the way to work, the things that you remember, all of these things are part of you because you're a witness. Some of them happen to you, and some of them happen to bounce into your heart and stay there. Some of them just lodge themselves in your heart when someone tells you a story and you can't forget it. Those are the things I write about. I try to focus on the things I wish I could forget because I know that they're debilitating me. Want to be released, like that song, please release me, let me. Like a lot of those in my heart catalog. And I just write them because I just want to stop thinking about them, even if there's something silly and small, I just want to get them out. So that's what I do.
so stories are essentially your exorcism.
Yes, or my limpia, my cleansing, because they're transformational. To write for me is my way of reducing stress in my life and making me understand things that happen to me and why they stay with me. In essence, writing for me is really good medicine.
I agree. It's basically the best way. I don't know if, like, without this tool in my toolbox, I don't know how I would ever sort of make sense of my life.
I know that periods that I have not had the writing, even just writing a little button, because I know moms are busy, but if you just write a little button, one sentence, that helps me to get clarity about something that happened, something that's haunting me, or something that I want to savor. So sometimes it's not that you want to extirpate it from your life. Sometimes that you want to savor something nice that happened to you, or something nice that someone said, or that you witnessed that was positive. It doesn't have to be negative. It could be neutral too, but it's about sitting. It's like a sitting meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote House on Mango Street when I was the busiest. I was teaching high school dropouts, but I would write a little button, just a paragraph or two, and save them up and put them together. And that's how that book got written.
Wow, that's amazing. And you also feel just as passionately about reading. I read In a House of My Own, I'm going to mispronounce this. The chapter is titled Merce Rodereda. Is that right? Does that sound right? Merce Rodereda. You wrote, I often remember where I was when meeting a book that sweeps me off my feet. I remember the moment and the intimate sensation of devouring a beloved text as distinctly as I recall the most sensual encounters of my life. Is it like this for everyone, or is it like this only for those who work with words? I want to believe everyone falls in love with a book in much the same way one falls in love with a person, that one has an intimate personal exchange, a mystical exchange, as spiritual and charged as the figure 8 meaning infinity. Oh, I just love that. I just love that.
Oh.
I feel exactly the same way. I just loved it.
Oh, I love it. I love when I meet other people that are crazy about words. It's so great.
Yeah. I have a memoir coming out, and this is my whole thing, is where I was when I read books. Cause I also, when I see them, I remember where I was, not just headspace, but physically a lot of the time, or where I carried it.
What I was wearing. Do you remember details of your clothes? And I remember crazy things. And I think, does everybody remember? And what do you do with all that flotsam and jetsam, right?
I know.
What's the name of your memoir?
It's called Bookends, a memoir of love, loss, and literature. It's coming out this summer.
Oh, love it. Great title.
Thank you. I'll send it to you. No, I don't really remember as much what I'm wearing because I don't know. My brain never thinks about that. But I do remember how I felt, or where I was when I cried while reading it, or, something that moved me about it. And I feel just touching and seeing it all the time, then it comes back in little snippets. But you're right, flotsam and jetsam. I mean, I keep worrying I'm going to run out of room. Where does it go?
I know, what do we do with all this stuff? I've been lately, because I'm going to turn 67 in a couple of weeks. I've been thinking you haven't written about that. And I'm one of those people that if you know me and you tell me a story, I'll say, have you written about that? I'm always reminding other people of what they should write about. But lately I've been asking myself, I need to write about that. So I made a whole list, write about, and then there's just so much. And even if I got put in prison for the rest of my life, I wouldn't have enough time to get it all down. So I just hope that I have a good health, because we want to honor all the people we've met, the people that have brushed past us, the people that are in our lives, and people we just glimpse in a second. There's so much that enriches our lives, even if they're exploding cigars. Sometimes those are the things that teach us the most. And we need to examine them to understand this thing called our life. And I hope by the time we get to the end of our lives, that we're wiser and more brilliant and better human beings.
So what's one thing on your list that you're going to write about?
Oh, I just write so many. There was this girl that I went to school with in 7th grade. I wrote a poem about her in my first book of poetry. And I just talked about this at the Miami Book Fair. She used to eat Reese's peanut butter cups in class and sneak them and go, and that, but she was not very popular. She was kind of gordita, a little chubby, and she had like shiny face and acne. And she was a mess, but I liked her. I thought I could see her inner talent. And she always would eat these Reese's peanut butter cups when she had her period. Because she was in 7th grade and she already was a woman, whereas I was like a little boy and I sat next to her. So I always associated like the smell of Reese's peanut butter cups ever after with my period. And when I finally got my period, I had to run out and buy Reese's peanut butter cups. Yes. I always, I pick up tampons, pick up Reese's peanut butter cups.
Yes, you're right. You definitely have to write that down. That's hilarious.
But I have nose, and I think I have like the power of a bloodhound to like capture scents. So that's in my writing a lot. And I think as writers, wannabe writers, I always tell them focus on smell because that's the ancestral and scientifically proven to bring back the past. So I try to focus on scents.
I feel like I had COVID almost a year ago. And I feel like my smell is still not 100% back.
Oh, that's sad.
I know. I think it's close, like taste and smell, but they're not like 100%. Like everybody else is like, oh gosh, do you smell? Then it just takes me that extra little bit. I'm like, well, now finally I do. But
maybe you need to practice. Like get a big little bin of cinnamon, and
I'll put that on the calendar. Cinnamon inhalation. Smell sharpening session. I'll send you a picture with my nose in a jar.
Do that with students to wake up their senses of their 5 senses in their writing. And I would bring things for them to touch or smell. And those little children, they had cinnamon at home, but everybody wanted to smell the little box with the cinnamon. Huh. They did. I guess it was very pleasant for them. Of course, cinnamon appeared in all their poems.
Interesting. I love that. No, it's true. I mean, I think that's part of what makes your writing so vivid. And I was actually curious. I know I keep talking about, I'm sort of like obsessed with your memoir and essays and everything in addition to this beautiful new story. But I was interested in the fact that you included so many photos because your words already are painting such a picture, right? It's already so vivid what you're saying. Why the photos?
You mean the visual photos?
Yeah.
I think that's how I view the world through images. And I could have been and should have been maybe a visual artist. I get along and have friends who are visual artists, and I understand their work. And I always think of that as the road not taken. If I hadn't been a writer, I would have liked to have done something with like textiles or fashion, clothing, textile. I'm very fascinated with people who work with clothing and textiles and design. And maybe because my father was an upholsterer and he brought home scraps of fabric, just like in the book. So I had wonderful, beautiful fabric from France and England and, the best. Because my father worked with high-end interior decorators and he would bring the little scraps for my mom to make dresses for my Barbie dolls. And so I got used to having really beautiful textiles at a very young age and loving their colors. And originally, when we're writers, we all start as artists. We draw before we go into language. So that has stayed with me. It's something that I still love and I still sketch. And my book, Puro Amor, chapbook, has my illustrations of my pets and pets of my friends. I still long and wish I had enough time to start another career. I would love to. I love those shows where people design clothing. I like those. And I just feel like I have the visual in me, the visual passion. And maybe that's why you see it in the story.
Interesting. Well, I mean, you think it's too late? If I have time to stick my nose in a box of cinnamon, maybe you have time to just spend
Well,
like an hour a week on making clothing.
Full disclosure, my friend Nancy Traugot from Home Frocks in Santa Fe, she and I have a project that got delayed or detoured by COVID. And we were working on a text and textile project where her clothing line would have some lines of poetry. And
Ooh.
and so I have handkerchiefs and children's dresses and pillowcases with words, stories that I get other people to embroider because I can't even sew a button. But, this concept of doing a show with text and textile and collaborating is something that's been put on hold, but I still want to explore, where we would display that, where that would be, exhibit.
Don't exhibit, you should sell it.
Well, no, this is the problem. When I find a beautiful vintage piece and I write on it, I give it to her. And it's one of the pieces in her shop in Santa Fe that most everyone wants to buy it. But the thing I make is not for sale. For me, it's like, why would I want to sell that? That's one of a kind. Why don't you buy my books instead?
Well, I mean, I think because what you're creating is so, the uniqueness of it, people want to share in that self-expression.
See what we can do so that I can satisfy my need to keep.
Yeah.
Maybe we can photograph these items and put them in a book, so that you could see the stories. Like they're on the clothing. There'll be like a wash towel, and it'll be about my mother and how she washed clothes until her hands blistered and she had an allergy because of the soap. And I'll buy these little vintage towels that, she taught me how to rummage and buy old textiles. So there's stories on the cloth. And my idea was to hang them up with clips and, display them somewhere. But maybe we can document them and photograph them and make a little book. That would be nice.
That would be great.
Okay, you planted that seed about a book in my head.
Okay, you're going to do it. I'm so excited about it.
Ends here with a thought. That's how I made my reality happen. I was in 5th or 6th grade when I visualized that a book on the shelf in the library with my name on it. And I tell young people, this is where everything happens. Everything begins with a thought. You don't have to tell anyone, but you have to hold it there and walk towards it every day.
Wow. Well, I'm so excited you have now another button to put on your to-do list.
Yes.
Wow. Well, it also sounds like you're such an inspiring teacher.
I don't like teaching too much because I want to work on my own things. So I kind of retired from that. I only teach it. I used once in a while at Macondo, the writing workshop I started, which people can apply to. I don't appear there anymore. I'm just the founder because I feel like now at 66, I need to focus on my own writing because I don't know how much time I have left before my Uber driver honks the horn and says, let's go. So I got to focus on my work.
That is really elevating Uber drivers here to quite a spiritual realm.
Well, they're honking all over the place around us with COVID. So we have to be very, very conscious and grateful and filled with an awareness of the temporality of our times and the fragility of our lives. And, work on something like it's the last day on your life, because sometimes it is.
I totally agree with that. And I constantly feel like I'm fighting against time. Like every day I'm like, oh gosh, I hope I get to finish this. I hope I get to finish that. What if?
You feel like you're a bad person if you haven't done something creative? Like if you've only done like balancing checkbook or something something domestic and you hadn't done anything creative, don't you feel like a bad person when you go to bed and think, what did I do today? Oh, I answered emails. Oh, I unpacked. Oh, I cleaned the kitchen, but nothing creative. Oh, what a bad human being I am.
I am very self-punitive, but maybe not in the exact same way. I feel like it's more on those days. Those are the days when I say, oh, I didn't get anything done. And, my husband will say something like, what do you mean? Like you were working out, I'm like, no. And I think that's what it is. It's that like, what did you do? What did you put down in the world? Or what happened?
What did you create? Because, we're mothering art. We're mothering art. I always talk about my books as being my children, and I know what it is to be a mother because I was the nanny for my niece for the second, third, and fourth month of her life. So I know how busy moms are. And it's exactly like that when you're a writer too, because your life is pulling you in different ways. If you can just write one little button, it will vindicate your day. You can go to bed, peace, and think you did something positive in the universe.
And yet you have to balance actually getting new inputs from all of your experiences, right? You can't just like lock yourself in a room. You've got to be out and about.
And I've been doing this on my phone, is I write a list of things I must write about, so they're just little notes that are buttons for buttons. They're not even a button. They're about a button. About, the girl with chocolates and her period, the little things like that I remember. And so I don't lose them, because in one day we may have 15 or 15 million ideas, but you just got to document enough so that you'll remind you when you sit at your desk. You don't wait to get inspired. Mm-hmm. You go to the button jar and you pick out something and you write the one that's going to take off.
Oh, maybe as part of your book on textiles, you should have a jar of buttons.
Well, I have an essay called Writing My Pajamas. That's another unfinished project about like things I share with younger writers about writing tips. So that's another unfinished manuscript.
Nice. I think you should like get multicolor buttons, and you can explain your whole button theory, and you could have it,
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think Collected Works is going to be blurbs. I think I'm the one who writes blurbs than any other writer in the universe.
Wow. Do you read all the books?
Yeah, I do. Uh-huh.
What are some of your your favorite books, or something, or if that's too hard, just something recently that's really moved you?
Oh, I read this book called Gordo, and I always forget. Jaime Cortez, I think, is the writer. Gordo. It's short stories about memories growing up as a migrant child. And they're so sad and funny, because nothing can be funny unless it's sad, and nothing can be sad unless it's funny. To make a really great story, you have to have both. And that book is, I blurbed it, and it's on my bedside so I can read it again. And I also blurbed a book called American Bastard by the poet Jan Beatty. And I just finished rereading that one again, because, she writes like a poet, because she is a poet. So that's really great. And then I'm reading Baggage by Alan Cumming, a memoir, kind of follow-up to his first memoir, Not My Father's Son. And that's really great too. So those are all things among tens and thousands of books that are all clamoring around my bed for attention.
Wow. In your memoir, you had one line that said, I guess it was some introduction you were writing, and you said, I'm the only girl with 7 brothers growing up in my house, right? 6 brothers. You were one of 7. And you said, that's all you need to know about you. Is that why? Tell me about that.
Well, I need to know, because everything goes back to my 6 brothers. They're like in my head. When you grow up with boys, they always make fun of you. Why are you wearing trenzas? Why are you wearing braids? What those ugly glasses? They just make you, whittle you down to nothing. And they're in my head, like when I write, that's a terrible line. Why did you think that was going to be good? No, you got to go back and rewrite that. That's trashy. You're terrible. You're nothing. They're like in my head. And they have no idea that I've incorporated them as my personal editors. Oh, well, I guess I need therapy, right? And therapy is great if you can. I've gone through depressions when I haven't been writing. So I strongly recommend go to seek a therapist, because it's like getting a professional story listener. When you write, you have the page as being your listener, but sometimes you need someone to be your bruja, your shaman, your guide. So.
Wait, where did I hear? Someone recently told me on this podcast, now I'm going to forget who it was, that they were talking to a friend of theirs who was a therapist, and they said that, I just think that everyone has the most interesting interior life, and like what goes on in people's brains. Like everyone has these just amazing stories. And I guess the therapist said back to this person, not true.
When I was in therapy, sometimes I had nothing to say. So I would just talk stupidities. And I always thought, I wonder if my therapist thinks this is a brilliant writer, and she's telling me about the last episode of Sex and the City.
I once I saw this therapist a long time ago, and I was sitting in the waiting room and she was running late, which she never used to do. And the door finally opened and out walked this widow, a young widow of a very famous man who had just famously like passed away. It was all over the news right then. And she walked out and I was like, oh my gosh. And I went in and sat down and I was like, actually, I'm fine. Like I have nothing. How can I compete? How can I compete with that? Like everything is good. I think I should just leave.
When I was a kid, sometimes we had to go to confession in Catholic school, and I didn't have enough sins, so I would make some up. Just to try to be nice to the priest. Well, I'll think of a couple of extra. And I got in that position with the therapist that I had to think of a good story, something to entertain her. I think that's how you get when you're a writer. You feel like you got to always be like on, and you've got to perform, and you have to please others. And that's when you need therapy, right?
Maybe. Or you just, go about your day and make lots of other people really happy.
Say, I need to write about that.
Oh my gosh. Yes, this endless list of things to write about. I also do that with other people too, by the way. I'm always like, oh, that would be a great story. That would be a great story.
That's a good story. When someone else seeds the conversation and gives you the gift of listening and silence, absolute silence. They're hanging on your words. That to me is a good story. And, I grew up in a house with everyone speaking at the same time, 9 people all talking at the same time, radios on, television's on. So when you could say something that would shut everyone else up in the house and they'd listen to you, that to me was like a sign, power and storytelling. I've said something that's funny or that's captured their attention. I think that trained me to become a storyteller.
Interesting. Well, I guess then there's hope for one of my 4 kids, because it's often, one time I was like so sick of everybody cutting each other off all the time at dinner. I was like, okay, you have to be holding this slice of red pepper. I'm going to pass it like a microphone around the table, and you cannot talk if you are not holding onto this pepper. That lasted for like 1 minute.
Maybe there'll be playwrights, and or filmmakers, and create all the dialogue mishmashing into each other. You hope.
I hope. Yes. Phew. Oh my goodness. Well, Sandra, this has been so much fun.
That Liliana Valenzuela translated my book, and she's brilliant, and she's been my translator since I met her in the early 90s. So do the math, how long we've worked together. She's practically translated all my books, not all, but we met each other in Texas where she lives. And every time I work with her on a project, it's like going on a car trip with your best friend. So it is. We laugh so much. And she's also just the best poet. And so it's great to have a poet who is your translator, because they pay attention to the same thing poets pay attention to, the syllable. And that's so great. And then she makes the lines sound beautiful in Spanish. So I just want to shout out to Liliana Valenzuela and let readers know that, even if they don't speak or read Spanish, it's nice to take a look and see. It's also on audio, which I taped.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm going to listen. Did you record it in English and Spanish, or just English?
I did for the very first time. I did the Spanish for the very first time. And it was scary, because I had to practice. And we had 2 actors that did the letter portion with Martita and Paula. And I also had to practice accents. I had to practice Argentine Spanish, and I had to practice Paula's, way of speaking English. And I had to practice French words that I'd never said out loud in my life. And, so it was a lot of stress, and it came out so beautiful. It's like a radio play. It's the right length that you could just, listen to it. And it's like going to a play. It's just the right length of what you're seated behind will withstand, just about an hour and a little bit longer than an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Really great project. And I just heard it a couple of weeks ago when I was in the car. I had not heard it since I was in the studio, and I was mesmerized. So I encourage everyone out there to take a listen.
Excellent. I can't wait. I'm going to go back and do that. Thank you. Thanks for chatting with me today. This has been so amazing. And now I'm just like going to be eagerly waiting to see what else comes out of that.
Well, I have a new book of poetry that I'm just reviewing the galleys this week.
Ooh.
Fall. It's called Woman Without Shame. And it's about 30 years since I've come out with a book of poetry, not because, I don't write poetry. I write it all the time, but I don't publish it. And I'm finally gathering a collection that I like. And so it'll be out next fall. Liliana Valenzuela is going to be working on translations. It'll be 2 volumes, one in English, one in Spanish. And I think if those of you who don't know, I'm a poet, take a look. And those of you who remember, you have not seen poems like these in 30 years. So please follow me on Instagram or on my website to see where and when I'll be appearing.
Oh, so exciting. Women Without Shame.
No, woman, singular. Woman without shame. Yeah.
Woman Without Shame. This is what happens when I try to take a note at the same time that I'm talking. Anyway, multitasking, failure. Well, I'm excited for that then. Fantastic.
Now that's on your memoir. I look forward to getting a copy.
Oh, I'll send you one. As soon as I have the final galley, I will send you one.
Sign it to me, please. I'd like to have them personalized.
I will sign it to you. I would be honored.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's a lot of years being by yourself to write something, a lot of hours. People don't realize that, right? Each book, every page is a lot of hours spent by yourself. So felicidades, celebrate, eat a donut, eat something you're not supposed to eat. Just celebrate.
Okay. All right. You too. Donuts are us. Okay. All right. Bye.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.